When I read a book recently on no, it wasn't Bouillet, it was Chiron on Bunini, and I was really interested in the Cranmer Mass, which I had never heard about previously, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it because it was, this like halfway point between Catholicism and Anglicanism, right?
Yep.
And so when you just look at the prayers that were suppressed in the Novus Ordo and the prayers that were suppressed in the Cranmer Mass, can you just fill me in on that? Because I'm just now learning about it, but what's interesting about the Cranmer Mass from your perspective?
So Archbishop Cranmer was the Archbishop for Henry VIII. So you had Henry VIII, he was the governor, the head of the church, and then his right-hand man as cleric was Cranmer. And Cranmer was greatly influenced by the continental Protestant reformers, and they didn't like the traditional Latin Mass. They didn't like the offertory prayers. They didn't like the Roman canon because both of them express that this is a sacrifice present before us. And they wanted to push more the commemorative element of the Eucharist. So it's more of a reception of Eucharist, and it's not witnessing this great unbloody sacrifice like we read about in Trent or even in the Church Fathers, right? So when he came, he brought this Lutheran idea with him, which Henry VIII was against. And actually Henry VIII did prefer the Latin Mass, and that went on. But when Henry VIII died, his son Edward was persuaded by Cranmer to update and change the liturgy. Of course, it went into vernacular. Another thing that Cranmer wanted to us was everything has to be said aloud for the people to hear. There's an audible element. As if you go to the traditional Latin Mass, you know that the entire Roman canon is silent, the offertory prayers are silent. I mean, the epistle and gospel and the collect are out loud, but so much of the Mass actually is hidden in silence. That's a big part of the Roman rite. Cranmer thought that was contrary to sacred scripture. And so everything becomes audible, and then everything that's not what he considers biblical gets cut out. So what was the Roman canon becomes a Eucharistic prayer that's shortened, it's condensed, and it stresses just the words of institution that we read in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, 1 Corinthians. And then there's more stress played on the communion rite. And so a lot of people have said, there's some similarities to what happened in 1965 to 1970 in the development of Bunini's Novus Ordo with what was going on with Cranmer. In other words, bringing everything out loud, reducing and simplifying prayers, reducing and simplifying the offertory. So there are some parallels. And I was aware of that having been an Anglican cleric before. And so it was kind of surprising coming into the Novus Ordo. I think I probably expected something more beefed up, and it seemed a lot closer. And it wasn't really until I found the traditional Latin Mass. I'd seen the traditional Mass on paper, but I hadn't really seen it, and experienced it as a Catholic. And when that happened, I realized, okay, this, the Eucharist transubstantiation is a diamond, and a diamond can be anywhere. It has the same value. But when you place that diamond in a setting by someone who really knows how to create a proper setting, it allows the light to move through it. It brings out certain features of it. And I think that's what the traditional Roman rite does. Over years, they created a setting for that diamond, which is Christ, the Eucharist, and transubstantiation. But that setting is the liturgy, and it makes it sparkle, it makes it shine, it makes us appreciate the diamond, the value. And I think when you dole that down, the diamond doesn't change. The diamond's always a diamond, but you maybe don't appreciate it as much. And maybe you don't see the qualities and the magnificence of that diamond. And I think, that's kind of what we've experienced. And people who go back to the traditional Latin Mass, it's not like it's a supersized transubstantiation. It's still the transubstantiation, it's still the Eucharist, it's still the Second Trinity, but we see it in a new setting, in a new light. And I think that does strengthen our faith. It really does.